Yeah, it's just a burp, like from the Culvers. It's good. But, I vouch for it. Okay.
Oh, that was your cold open.
There you go.
That's great.
Hi, this is Daniel Natal, and I'm having a very special conversation with Ben Armstrong of The Ben Armstrong Show. And this is part 2, as I said, and you can check out part 1 and by going to the New American to Ben Armstrong Show, or you can check out the link in the description below. And I'm very proud and pleased to be here because this is my time at headquarters in Appleton, Wisconsin, and I got to meet a lot of the other show hosts and kind of do roundtables and discussions with them. And I've been a huge fan, obviously, of Ben for quite a number of years. And so, Ben, I wanted to start with you. I'm going to ask you to tell my audience about your show. And you basically do the events of the day, but you do them from almost one of the things I like about your show is you inject it with a little bit of faith, and that to me is very powerful. So.
Yeah, I come at it from a Christian perspective, but I take the news, and I like to say my show is just about truth, and I'm really just taking what the media does, all their lies, and filling in what the real truth is, and exposing what they're not telling you. Especially, I've been really big on the vaccine stuff, so if you're interested in anything on the vaccine, I cover that a lot, because the reason why is because there's a lot of lies about what's going on with the vaccine. So it makes me have to keep going because I keep finding more truth. But I'll deal with any topic because I'm a talk show host, and that's what I was. That's what I was on the radio. I still am on the radio. And it's so fantastic that God has blessed me with the ability to have the wisdom to cut through things that are complicated. Another thing I like to do, Daniel, is take complicated issues and make them simple to understand. So like I can listen to someone talk in a complicated way. Like you talk much more sophisticated than I do. And I can follow what you're saying, but I don't talk that way. So I'm like the average Joe guy, the assembly line guy, that I'll listen to all this interesting stuff, but then when it comes out of me, it comes out simplified. And I think people like that, but yeah, that's not. It's just how I am. But I'm glad that God gave me the ability to do that. That it just comes out that way, and I don't even have to really try. That's how I am. So that's basically what my show is.
I insulted Ben by calling him a grug. I said that he's.
That's not an insult.
I know.
That's a compliment.
Because like I tend to go off on prolix. I pontificate. Going off, and sometimes I listen to myself and I just sound like a crazy schizophrenic hobo in a corner. But then I listen to you. Like we had this conversation, and I was saying that what the movement needs is people who are average people, good people, real people, authentic people. We've had enough of kind of bloated, pompous, pseudo-intellectual people like myself, and we like the messages don't get through, unless you can make them understandable, unless you can make them real. And so that's what you said. You said the real truth, which a normal person would say, "Oh, that's pleonastic, real and true." Of course, it's the truth, but it is. It's the real truth. You have like a very authentic way of expressing. You filter the events. They come into you, they filter out, and they become very understandable. I loved your reporting on China, by the way. You were talking about, well, anyway, why don't you explain more about some of these recordings that were coming out of China, Ben?
Yeah, well, we've had military generals from China that I held off. People don't know. It looks like I hit things really quick sometimes, and it's not. I'm actually holding off to make sure that this is true stuff. But the military recordings out, May 14th is when it came out. And somebody sent me, see, my audience is great. They send me stuff too, so it's cool. It keeps me up. Someone sent me a link, and I found out about it right away. But then I was like, I don't know if this is authentic or not. But people who are experts in China, that they dedicated their life studying what's going on with China, said that these generals, the voices on the tape seem legitimate, and that they match what they're hearing, and the way they were talking, it all seems legitimate. And it helps explain why China shut their economy down. Because who's going to purposefully sabotage their economy? I know China was on the verge of an economic collapse, just like America's on the verge of an economic collapse. China was too. But when you shut your economy down the way they have, 400 million people, and we all know it's not about COVID. Look how long they're still shut down. I was thinking there's something so much more to this. They're getting set for what these generals are saying in the tape. This is them saying this, getting ready for war. They don't name a country, but a lot of people think it's Taiwan. But I made the point that regardless of whether it's Taiwan, it's America. Because if they go against Taiwan, we have promised, even Biden has doubled down that he will protect Taiwan. They're preparing for conflict with America. You can't put it any other way. That's what this tape is revealing. Whether it's the conflict will take place in Taiwan, or are they preparing for a surprise attack? They would never try to invade and attack us alone. I guarantee you that. But this is where the pushing of the globalists of Russia and China coming together is very horrific in my point of view, because Russia has the best nuclear capability in the world, better than America. I'm not dissing America. I wish I could say we still have the best. We used to. But Russia has the best nuclear weapons. Don't worry about what you're seeing in Ukraine. Don't worry about what you're seeing in Russia as the Russians struggle with Ukraine. They're not built. They didn't build their military to occupy. And that's what they're trying to do with Ukraine, because they want the Ukraine as part of Russia. They're built to utterly destroy. China knows this. China's going to align with Russia, which they already have. Russia would use nuclear missiles on America, and China then would wait and then use their manpower, something Russia is not good at occupying, China thinks they can do, and occupy America. And when I first heard this, I understand some people, the first time they're hearing this, will think that I'm crazy, Daniel. But I even was like, China, it doesn't make sense. They really invade America, until I found out that China imports 50% of its food. And America is a huge chunk of food production for them, just like we do stuff. They want our farmland. They want our farmland. That is a huge motivation, is why they wouldn't just totally blow us up. So it sounds crazy, but here's what I will warn people. If you see in the news a blockade of Taiwan by China, because I don't think they're going to directly invade. If they'll do a blockade, I think, at first, which will set the stage. That's when you really should start worrying. And then we have the whole Nicaragua situation, where Nicaragua has now said that Russia can put their military ships and planes in Nicaragua, which is like the Cuban Missile Crisis, and everyone's yawning and saying, nothing's going on here. And so this is what I do on my show. I see these things, I'm like, this is the truth. This is what people should be talking about. And the media is wrong on everything. The things that they say are disasters are usually nothing, and the things that they act like are nothing become the massive disasters.
They're trying to distract you away, and that's a good point. Like the Ukraine may be a distraction, so that we're looking in Eastern Europe while what's actually happening is in Taiwan. If the United States if China can basically reclaim the South China Sea, then they can take over the Pacific. And if they take over the Pacific, a lot of the U.S.'s naval power goes away. Historically, empires are based on naval power and trade lanes. They get all the tariffs from all the traffic. If China starts getting that traffic, that's like $1 trillion taken out of the United States' budget. It destroys the United States as a functional global empire. And so that is the pivot point, is going to be Taiwan. And you're right. Biden is doubling down on, keeping Taiwan separate because he wants a beachhead, so that they can continue to control the Pacific. But it's going to be very, very hard. They did a couple of years ago. There was a news story about computer war games that they had done, and they had done 6 different scenarios of the United States versus China, with Taiwan as this pivot point. And the United States lost every one of them, because China has the advantage of having their country right there. The United States would have to ship over everything, so it's a lot harder to do the war for the United States. And but yeah, most world wars start with a seemingly insignificant place, like the Balkans in World War I, or Hitler invading Poland, some obscure little Polish corridor that leads to World War II. And so so there is the very real possibility of a powder keg happening because of Taiwan, and then it spreads.
Yes, and then you have a Russian president saying that he will nuke the United States openly. And I always say, how are people not grasping this? They're trying to say Vladimir Putin is crazy, which I don't believe Vladimir Putin's crazy. He's evil, but he's smart. He's not crazy. When you say that, they're just like brushing it off, like, oh, he's nothing. He's not nothing. And I know sometimes people make these threats to make other powers back down. And you could say, well, he's just posturing. But Vladimir Putin really does not like full-time globalism either. And so that's what I think people don't factor in. The globalists don't like Putin. And he plays along with them. But Putin is uncontrollable. Globalists don't want a dictator until it's the dictator they have chosen. And they would never choose Putin to be their leader. And since they know Putin will never follow them, Putin is a wild card. And we're treating it like, well, this will never happen. Why wouldn't it? Look at what's happened with Russia and what Biden has done. By shutting them off the SWIFT system, look at the ruble. It's higher than it's ever been, I think. It's way stronger against the dollar. Their economy, they're being able to see we can function economically without the United States. That's what they're being shown. China's watching that too. What do we need the United States to trade with or be around anymore? Once Vladimir Putin really feels like we're cool, and if he sees chaos in America, this is why it's so dangerous that we have enemies within. Yeah. If we see chaos in the streets, we always forget about what are our enemies thinking. It's not like everybody's good in the world. There are people waiting to pounce on America, but they need to believe America's weak. They need to believe that it's in chaos. They need to believe that if they strike, they might not even get hit back. That's what they're waiting for. They're still afraid they're going to get hit back. But this China tape tells me they're mobilizing, and the fact that they shut their economic production down, I also believe that's a sign of no turning back.
Becoming insular, yeah.
Yeah, how do they go back?
Yeah.
They got to go forward with whatever their plan is. Hopefully their plan is just Taiwan and it doesn't end up at the United States. But even if it starts that way, it could still end up here in the United States.
Yeah, you have to remember, you make a good point. When Antifa and Black Lives Matter were burning down 400 cities in the United States, the John Birch Society had this great book on China, and they were showing all the signs that were in the Antifa crowds and the handlers. A lot of them were Chinese nationals, and they would have signs that said revcom.us. And when you went to revcom.us, it stands for Revolutionary Communism, and it leads to a website in Beijing. So you have Beijing fomenting racial discord in the United States to make us concentrate on domestic issues so that we don't pay attention to what's happening internationally. And so you're absolutely right. They're exploiting ethnic division within the United States. This happened, the Russians exploited this strategy when they wanted to take over the Balkans. They went to the Ottoman Empire, and they went to the Slavic peoples within the Ottoman Empire, and they said, you're Slavs, they're Turks. Why are you allowing Turks to rule you? And so they started Slavic pan-nationalism as a way to alienate this ethnic minority from the rest of the empire, and it collapsed the Ottoman Empire. They did the same strategy with the Austrian Empire, which was I did a presentation, and the Austrian Empire has the distinction of calling itself the melting pot. They had that logo, a century and a half before the United States ever did, because they had all their ethnic minorities. They had the Slovenes, the Austrian Germans, they had the Hungarians, obviously, they had the Italians, all these different ethnic minorities, Sorbs, were in there. And so this melting pot collapsed when, in this case, the British Empire went and destabilized the empire, leading to Adolf Hitler. And one of the things that you said that struck me too, Hitler, he basically, he wanted to dislodge Germany from the global economic system, and they started putting sanctions on him. So he bypassed that system by trading directly, like outside of currencies, and he would go to different countries and he would say, okay, let's trade directly in commodities. You give me so much oil, I'll give you so much grain. You give me so many shoes, I'll give you so many bowling balls. And he started doing it with direct commodities, and their economy blossomed. This was, good goodness, what was the name of Walter Funk was their economic minister, and he actually strategized around the global financial system. This leads to World War II, where they wanted to reincorporate, so we see, so very, very, it's very interesting, the parallel that you just brought up between China doing similar things internationally.
That's why I love what you do, because I can't do what you just did, where I can't cite history like you, but I'll mention something currently and you can tie it. We've seen this before, which is so important. That's how you learn from history, and that's how you don't repeat the same mistakes. And when the same mistake is being repeated, you always see it like right away. Boom, this is what happened. You made a point in episode 1 on my show about how, I forget which empire, but you're talking about they let the criminals out in the street on purpose.
Yeah, French Revolution.
France. And we're seeing that. We're seeing that right here where they're letting the criminals out on purpose, and they're trying to make sure that they don't keep arrested or free them. And even during COVID-19, they tried to use that as an excuse to release criminals. Who does that? Is that for the safety of us? There is only one motivation for that. Only one, to create chaos in America. Why would they do that? They're globalists, and either they've sold themselves out, and because they've made money now, they don't realize. I always say this on my show. The globalists in America are the stupidest people on the face of the earth, because the globalists around the world hate Americans, including the globalist Americans. They are just using them, and they are laughing at them behind them. China's laughing at all the people they bought off in America, all the senators. These senators think, well, I've made it rich, so it's worked out well now selling myself out to China. Then it will continue. And China's saying, you just wait. And they're going to get backstabbed and destroyed. They're destroying their own country. They're going to their own destruction, and they don't even realize it. And it's frustrating for me to watch because I can see it happening, and it's like in slow motion.
They're bribing them in monopoly money.
Yes.
They're bribing them in Zimbabwe bucks. So at the end of it, they're going to end up with nothing. And they sold out, kind of like selling the family cow for magical beans. And you're sold real wealth for fake wealth. And like Adam Smith talks about that in The Wealth of Nations, he says that money is not real wealth. Land is real wealth. Water is real wealth. Shoes are real wealth. And so China, as you pointed out, China does not have a lot of real wealth. 3/4 of their country is desert. So they want the real wealth of the United States, which is land, which is arable land, which is wheat. Carol Quigley talks about that in The Tragedy and the Hope. He said by 1900, the United States was producing more wheat than the next 5 countries combined. China is looking over at the United States like a wolf looking at a chicken coop, and they want that land. And unfortunately, we have many. Biden is an example. Getting money from China, getting kickbacks to sabotage their own economy, shutting down oil production, shutting down, selling our meat and supply chains to Hormel Foods to China. They're gutting the United States. They're selling real wealth, and they're getting paper Zimbabwe bucks. That is stupid, because once this comes down, those Zimbabwe bucks are worth zero.
You just simplified it. So you just did what I like to do. But that was a simplification so brilliant that
Thanks,
yes,
man.
they're getting paper money for what would really be the asset, which is the real wealth. And they're selling us out as Americans and selling our land out, our companies, our factories they've already done and moved them all over there. The things that made us so that you would never want to mess with America. Now you don't want to mess with China. They have the factories. They have and you don't really want, it's not like we want to mess with China. We really don't. We're not going to be the people who go to war. But that was brilliant how you showed they're selling real wealth for fake wealth. And that's why I'm saying they're going to get backstabbed by China. That's exactly, I didn't think of it in that way, but that's exactly the way China is looking at it. Exactly. They're thinking, suckers, we're doing this, and then we're going to backstab you, but we've already obtained what the real wealth is.
Yeah, they've been amassing gold and all these other commodities, wheat, soy, everything from the United States. And but you said something interesting. At the start of this, I said that I like your biblical perspective, and you said these people are blinded. They don't see it, and it's frustrating for you because you see it so clearly. But our leaders, our alleged leaders, don't see it, and it just reminds me of Pharaoh, who was blinded. His heart was hardened, and even though facts were obvious in front of him, he couldn't see it or intellectually process it, and it led to his destruction. So
I have to comment on that because I wear my Christianity on the sleeve. That's what worries me, is it seems like a spiritual blindness, and it feels like God's judgment is coming upon America. So the spiritual blindness is that God is making our leaders be blind so that they can't see it, because he has a purpose, and the Bible is full of this, where Israel is still even a more moral nation, and he will take more wicked nations to punish his own, because God punishes those who he loves. What parent who doesn't punish the ones that he loves, does that parent really love that child? You see, if you do no discipline, you're not really showing love. It's always about correction. It's never about, hey, I'm amazed God has waited this long, to be honest with you, because he's had every excuse to say, I'll punish America. He could have done that 30 years ago, 50 years ago. He could have done that. He's given us grace and mercy, but the Bible is clear. God is just.
No,
and so it scares me for others. I'm not scared because I know where I'm going. And I believe God can protect people too. And like you said in the show with me, that if you make it through this, there will be a light at the end. The history is full of that.
Yeah, well, just as a reminder, every society is made up, as we discussed it in part one, plug for part one, that a society is made up of different institutions, right? It's made up of government is one institution, religion is another institution, academia, media. Those are different institutions. And we have to remember that our leaders, there's the political institution and there are leaders of the political institution, but that doesn't mean they're the leaders of our society. And the true leaders of our society, we have to remember are, when this country was founded, it was founded on religious principles by Puritans fleeing Quakers and all these different denominations, Mennonites, and they wanted to create a religious utopia. Thomas Paine called it a Christian Sparta. It was his vision for America, Christian Sparta. And so we understood at that time that it wasn't the political leaders who were our leaders, because that's just one institution. It was actually God. Certain states, I can't remember if it was Vermont or Connecticut one, they actually had the Bible. They didn't have a state constitution. In the colonial period, the Bible was their state constitution. And that was the original setup, because they understood that, the politicians are in charge of three things: infrastructure, the military, and a judiciary. Other than that, they're not the leaders of our society, and people need to be reminded of that. So if the governmental structure takes a hit, it'll be very painful, but it will be a reminder that the actual leadership, of our country, that power resides at a much higher level. So I'm gonna end that there. Ben, do you have any final thought on that? Or?
I just really appreciate getting to know you, and now you're a personal friend of mine. Where people see us on the same website, but we didn't really know each other, and we've gotten a chance to get a bond, and that you'll be a friend for me for life.
Anyway, folks, I'm going to leave it there. I'm getting misty-eyed. Ben's a really great guy. And check out his show. Check out part one. Go to thenewamerican.com and go to the Ben Armstrong Show. He's a force to be reckoned with. Thank you so much for tuning in.